My parents were very focused on me being like a factory worker. I got married young, dated for 6 years, married for 4 months. She ended up with my best friend. And if it doesn't happen, well, then I'll take a handful of pills. But I really felt I could make it happen.
Is it ever really too late to reinvent yourself? How much of your life is shaped by what other people expect of you, and how much of it is shaped by what you really want? When was the last time that you were honest with yourself about what you really want? Maybe someone told you a story, your parents, and maybe you knew that you didn't want it, but you believed it. Or maybe you were one of those people that came out at the world swinging. You knew exactly what you wanted and you went for it, but then you failed. That is it, that you failed. And then what did you do? Did it crush you? Did it make you afraid? Or did it set you free? That's what happened to our guest today. He failed and it set him free. And wait till you see what he did. What's up? I'm Matt. Welcome to Earth Monster, the storytelling show that celebrates vulnerability and speaks to the darkest, messiest little parts of your heart about the lies that we tell ourselves every day. The stories that we use to get out of bed, the fantasies that we let propel our lives. I call these things necessary delusions, and you probably call them something else, like manifestations. I'm manifesting right now. I read The Secret. I did yoga on YouTube, and I've got one of those big Stanley cups. Happy to have you. If you're the kind of Earth Monster who probably needs therapy, but you'd rather listen to a podcast, it's me. Then subscribe because you found your people. Today, we're talking to Bob. Bob responded to this ad that I post on Craigslist in the California area, Arizona. I'm not really sure. I'm losing track where these Earth Monsters are from, and it doesn't matter because we are talking to people of all kinds from all across the land, and they're just giving us a little piece, a little snack of what they think about, what they feel, where they came from, what drives them. And Bob did all of this. Bob was fed a story. Expectations were set. He failed. He reinvented himself and he lived his dream. And it is such an awesome story. So I hope you'll enjoy it. And I hope that you will look for a piece of yourself in Bob, because that's what this is really about, is finding a little piece of ourselves in the storytellers. But you really have to want to do it, because I think it's just our unconscious bias that kind of makes us go like, no, that's not me. That's Bob. Okay. That's not, how could that be me? I'm Matt. I'm not Bob, but you are. We're all Bob. So I'm excited to share this conversation with you. It was a good one. And Bob takes us to the depths. And I really appreciated how transparent he was in this conversation, because I think a lot of people probably go there and don't talk about it. So it's helpful that Bob did. Anyway, let's go now to my conversation with Bob.
I would say I'm not sure how comfortable I am with the delusion part, because in my case, my parents were very focused on me being like a factory worker, like a factory supervisor kind of person. They wanted me to do something that was very blue collar, very stable, put in your 40 years and retire. Well, I'm more than that. I've always been more than that. And I didn't really get started in TV and then becoming an author until I was 32 years old. In fact, as far as being an author is concerned, I started that when I was about 55. So one of the things that hopefully people can get out of this conversation is don't feel like you're too old to get it done. The ball player Satchel Paige, the old pitcher who was just so fantastic, pitched into his 50s even. And somebody asked him, how do you keep going? How do you keep pitching all these decades? And he said, if you didn't know how old you was, how old would you be? And I love, it's one of my favorite quotes of all time. It speaks to the idea that you can start at any time and make a dream happen, but you have to recognize the dream and then you have to put the work in.
So, Bob, I love how you started there. Why don't you take me back to your parents wanting you to be sort of a factory worker? Can you tell me, like, how was that story sort of relayed to you? How did it land with you? Like, how did you carry it with you?
Well, part of it came, of course, from my parents were both pretty blue collar people. Dad ended up being a law enforcement officer for 35 years, but he started out like a lot of people. He worked at a Wonder Bread company doing deliveries and so on. And mom was a telephone operator. She worked in a factory as I forget what it was. She was a person who looked at all the parts and made sure they were all correct.
Where are you from?
I was born in Brooklyn, but I grew up in beautiful Southern California in West Covina, which was a great place to grow up. It was a great place to live. The families were all wonderful to each other, great communication. The kids all played. You knew all of your neighbors. You knew everybody on the block and the blocks surrounding you even. And it was just an idyllic childhood. And I think part of the reason that I became what I became was because I was able to express my imagination with my fellow neighbors. Like any kids, we had great imaginations and we did all sorts of fun things. Well, when I started, as I got closer to high school graduation, I had the last 3 years of my high school experience had gotten interested in drama, and it absolutely opened up a whole new world for me. And then got involved in music also. So by my senior year, I was a complete performer. And
how'd your parents feel about that?
Sorry?
How did your parents feel about that shift?
That's where we're headed. You know, I told them of my interests, and they said, "Well, you can't make any money that way. You can't make a living that way." My father tried to get me, or actually got me an interview with a paper manufacturing company, and they didn't hire me because they said it didn't seem like I wanted to be there, and I didn't want to be.
Right.
The last thing I wanted to do was be in manufacturing, but I gave into it, and I ended up going into the Air Force to learn electronics, and then did electronics for about 10 years. Bored silly, couldn't stand it. Still dreaming of doing something in the performance realm. And one of the things that I had was I was very interested in news and history. Both huge interests in both of those. And so I got married young, like a lot of people. It turned out it was not a good situation. I'd been married for 6 years, or dated for 6 years, married for 4 months. She ended up with my best friend.
I did that too, Bob.
There you go.
Together for 5 years, married for 3 months.
I made sure that I did it because I was hoping to get her locked in, and that if she made the promise that we would somehow make it. And of course, that's not the case. So anybody watching, that's the first thing that I'll tell you is if it's not right, it's not going to be right. You know, the woman that I'm with now, I've been married to for 16 years, and it's been wonderful. It's been everything that I could have wanted out of a relationship. So it's
can we take a detour? Can we take a detour at the first marriage there, actually? Because I'm really interested. I really did like, a very similar thing there. I'm wondering kind of what were you telling yourself leading up to that wedding? Because in my case, it was already falling apart. And I kept saying, my delusion at the time, I call it a delusion. You can call it whatever you're comfortable with. But I was sort of saying to myself, like, you know what? It's the stress of the wedding. It's a lot of family involved. The wedding's going to happen and this is all going to become relaxed. We're going to sort of, you know what I mean? And it was really the exact opposite happened.
Exactly. And I was the same way. In the 6 years that we were together, we fought almost every day. It didn't have to be a big fight. We could just be bickering about something. But every day there was something. And, I really felt like being married was somehow going to magically take that away. And that once we had committed to each other, that we would find that special, significant connection and, that we had sort of danced around for years. And I remember waking up the morning after, because we ended up going to Las Vegas. We did a quickie wedding. The next morning in the hotel, and I thought, I don't feel any different. I don't feel any different. And that was tragic. to know that I had made that choice to be with her, and in the hopes that we would somehow be able to put it together again magically. And
Yeah.
that wasn't the case.
The day that you were getting married, were you still sort of weighing that out? Were you thinking, is this really going to help? Were you sort of coming to wake up from that idea and be like, oh, this is, maybe I shouldn't do this?
You know, it's funny. We were living in Southern California at the time. It was in the winter, early December, and we had both woken up fairly early that morning, about 6 a.m., and we debated it back and forth for about an hour.
Oh, you
And
talked about it.
well, she would say no, I don't think it would work, and I'd say, well, why? I think we should. And then she would take the tack and say, well, you know what? I think you're right. Let's get married. And I go, well, I don't know. Are we really doing the right thing? Bouncing back and forth for that whole hour until finally, maybe out of exhaustion, she said, okay, fine, let's go do it.
Wow.
What's funny is that I think the universe was trying to tell us something, because we had planned to leave at noon because we were waiting to get some money from a friend who was going to help us out. I went next door to a restaurant, got us some hamburgers for the trip, locked my keys in the car. Then, when the AAA finally showed up, we got on the road. We got to Cajon Pass, and it was snowing on Cajon Pass. But the Highway Patrol was escorting people, so we were able to go through. But
Oh, wow.
hours to drive, 100-odd miles in the snow. So I'm pretty sure, the heavens were going, no, and then I didn't listen.
Well, you're probably like pushing through each of those obstacles. I could go into similar details where it was like, I swear something outside of myself was like telling me not to do it. And I similarly, it's funny that you're talking like this, because I was the driving force behind this is going to work. I'm curious. So after it falls apart, what was your mindset at that point? What were you thinking about?
We had gone about a week earlier, myself, my wife, and the best friend. We had driven to Phoenix. We were in a business that we were trying to keep alive, and there were some businessmen there who were interested in buying into the business. So I said, you know what, let's just go and see if we can talk them into it. Well, we couldn't, but at the same time, when we got there, we got to Phoenix, Scottsdale, there was a feeling that I should be there for some reason. There was just a calling in that area, like that's where my future was. About a week later, when she said, well, I'm leaving, and we could try to keep working on this, and I said, no, I'm not. I'm going to move. And I packed my car up and I took off. That's where it all began for me. That's when I found a broadcasting school that was affordable, and that because I hadn't worked in the last year, I was able to get a student loan and really get going. And then from there, I went to Tucson and broke into radio, and then went from radio to television. And I was in television for 18 years as a TV news producer and anchor and sportscaster and all sorts of things.
So this was the time that really, so if you'd grown up with this, your parents kind of giving you this factory blue collar mentality, you end up going into the Navy, I think you said, right? And Air Force, sorry, and doing electrical kind of stuff. And was this the first time, kind of post marriage, was this the first time in your life that you sort of like, shook off the shackles and went towards something creative?
Oh yeah, because I've always sort of wrestled with suicide. That's always been a problem for me, depression and anxiety. And when she said she was leaving, I said, you know what? I'm 32 years old. I have nothing to show for myself, and screw it. I'm going to go make this happen. And if it doesn't happen, well, then I'll take a handful of pills. But I really felt I could make it happen. And the Phoenix, Scottsdale area, for whatever reason, called to me. And like I say, it was almost immediately after I arrived that I found the broadcasting school. So, it was very all or nothing at that point.
Well, Bob, I appreciate you, taking it to that sort of vulnerable place, and really appreciate that you're here and that it worked out like this for you. Wow. I wanted to go back just a little bit. I love that you sort of nailed it right away with this, like, my parents really wanted to raise me as this factory worker, right? So I'm curious, when you were a kid, how much of that mentality did you take on? Did you ever take it on? Did you always want to shake it off and do something creative? Or did you kind of buy into it and go like, no, this is safety, this is stability, did it stick with you?
Oh yeah, I bought into it early. Did all the chores that I was supposed to do on a daily basis, and was a good kid. I was a real good kid. I respected my parents' authority, and I was very happy to be a good kid. And then as a sophomore, I went to a new high school and took drama, and boom, everything just opened up. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, here was this world that I had thought about, imagined about. I mean, I like any creative kid, I would take my cassette recorder and do interviews of the kids in the neighborhood, or I would write stories about the over the line game that we had, like I was a sports reporter. I,
Sure.
I did a lot of things like that, a lot of performance based things that were very creative, and so I think I knew that it was there, but
Yeah.
have a chance to actually put it out there and hear from people that you had a talent for it, that you had a gift for it, which is the very last thing that I would hear from my folks. In fact, my mom, I love to tell the story. My very first play, I had a fairly significant role, did what I felt was a good job, and everybody around me said I was doing great. So she came to the play, and I said, "Well, what'd you think?" And she said, "You act like that at home." So, you know, and then when I got
And
in,
how did that land with you?
oh, terrible, because, everybody wants that praise. And the thing was, I was getting the praise from people around me, my uh, co-students were very positive about what I was doing and what
Right.
I had and developing those talents, and then I got into music as well as drama. I invited her to a musical show that we did. Afterwards, I said, "What do you think?" And she said, "These chairs are really hard." And in fact, just to tell you now that this is 60, well, no, 50 years later, that I sent her a copy of my newest book, which
Which is called, yeah.
I'll show it on camera. It's the last words of the famous and infamous, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. But the story behind this is that I sent her a copy of the book, and I'm still waiting to hear any positive response. And she's had it for about a month now. I'm not going to get a positive response. That's a hard lesson, but through therapy, I came to discover that you really can't do it with their baggage clinging on to you. You've got to shed that and become your own person and pursue the things that you really love. And like I said, when I turned 32, I had nothing going for me, so I had no reason not to try. And it worked out great. I was in the business for a long time. I won 2 Emmys. I won 4 Associated Press awards. I won numerous local news awards. It was a wonderful time, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And then when that was done, then I became an author. And my first book came out in 2017, 2018, right in there. That was called
Hmm.
Forgotten Tragedies. Did fairly well, as well as an independent, because my publisher is a very small publisher. It's a very small
Hmm.
publishing house on the East Coast. But to get that, I'll tell you, I got rejected about 80 times by publishers before I finally found a publisher who said, "You know what? I like this idea. Let's run with it." That was Forgotten Tragedies.
Bob, tell me about how do you accept rejection? It's interesting to me. You bring that up professionally, right? Because you're talking about sending your book to your mom, and the first thing that comes into my head is like, he knows the response he's going to get, and he's still sending it.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it is rejection, right? So I'm wondering, and yet I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like when you talk about that with your mom, it still feels like it's sort of a raw nerve for you. It still hurts. But when you're talking about it professionally, it sounds like you've almost developed a callus, and maybe you turned that into sort of a strength for yourself in your career.
I would say going through the experience that I went through at 32 with really nothing to show for myself and saying, I'm going to be a broadcaster. And then the work that you have to put in to make that happen. I was working for free at a local radio station in Tucson, and then I was able to get on with a talk station and work 2 days a week, and began to slowly build my career. And I'm a real believer that if you show them that you're interested and that you have some talent, they'll give you the opportunities. And I was the type of person that if I had to mop a floor or take out some waste baskets or clean a bathroom, I did it. And I made sure they knew that I was willing to do that. And so I think there was always a sense that if I just keep it moving forward and stay as positive as I can, and understand it's scary as heck. I mean, from being a broadcaster, even doing a podcast, there are times I'm sure when you sit and go, boy, am I really good enough to do this? Is anybody going to listen?
Sure.
Can I really make something out of this? And again, maybe it's because I had nothing else to fall back on, but I absolutely focus on the idea that if I put the work forward, I can make this happen. And I had read enough things over the years, enough books over the years, cyber psychonetics or whatever. And, but I knew that keeping that positive, moving forward approach would eventually pay off. And it did. It took time, as it always does. But by 2 years into my broadcast career, I was working full time at the NBC station in Bakersfield. I was the backup sportscaster. I was the 5 o'clock and 11 o'clock producer. I was anchoring these 5-minute cut-ins, local cut-ins, but were, focused on local news for people. I mean, I was doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And so when Mother says nothing or says negative, I don't care. I don't care anymore because I did what I had to do. And I'm very proud of the fact that all that work that I put forward led me to where I am today.
Bob, would you call yourself a people pleaser?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
What do you think was the most important thing in the world to you when you were 11 years old?
Oh, baseball. Baseball was everything. And, if I could do it again, I probably would try to be a baseball announcer. I loved Vin Scully and absolutely adored baseball from my very earliest upbringings to today. I'm still a huge, huge baseball fan. So,
what was it about baseball when you first learned about it? Or
boy, that's hard to say. The beauty of the game, the anxiety of the game, the difficulty of the game, because it's not an easy game to play or to play well. And I became pretty good at it, but it took some heartache and some hard practices and bad hop ground balls and things like that. My dad was a real good ball player.
Yeah, I was going to ask, were your parents supportive of you playing baseball and following that passion?
Oh, yeah. Well, Dad was a good enough ball player back east that I'm sure he was probably scouted in high school. I've never gone to try to find out for sure, but he played not only high school ball but travel ball, tri-state area, and was part of some fabulous teams. Played with some very well-known ball players, even a couple of Hall of Famers, but he kind of got trapped in the, oops, it looks like we're pregnant, we better give up the dream and go be parents and be responsible.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they were so against me dreaming about anything.
Yeah.
Because they didn't feel that dreams could be accomplished. And I'm here to tell you that it's exactly the opposite, as long as you're realistic. When I have a friend who asked me just the other day, she said, how do you write books? How do you get yourself up to write a book? Because she said, I'll write a page or two and then I'll put it down for a week. And now what do you do? And I said, it's this simple. I read something once that said, if you can do 2 pages a day, which is not much, 2 pages a day, Do that for 2 months every day, just 2 pages. If you want to do more, do more. But don't burn yourself out. Do 2 pages a day. At the end of that 2 months, you're going to have 120 pages, and that's a book. It's that simple. You just have to make a little bit of time for the dream. A lot of people will not do that because they're so afraid of the failure or the potential failure.
So tell me about the book. Let's talk about your new book. Yeah.
Again, it's Last Words of the Famous and Infamous. It's exactly like it sounds. It's 75 sort of mini essays on various famous people, from actors to musicians to politicians to sports figures, all sorts of, and they're all names that people will recognize.
Give me a couple standouts. Who are some of your favorites that are featured in the book?
Oh, gosh, there's so many of them. The one that started it all was Sam Kinison, because when Sam died, he was on his way to Laughlin to do a show, and he was hit by a drunk driver. And when I read his last words, he was lying there on the pavement dying, and he began to talk to the sky, and he began to say, wait, I'm not ready. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And then the people that were there said something came over his face, and he said, oh, okay, okay, okay. And he was gone. So, it certainly seemed as though there was something there that was prompting him. And I thought, wow, that's really amazing. So then I started to look at some other last words, thinking, well, I wonder how many people have had similar experiences. And the truth is, they're all over the place. They're all over the place. When some are incredibly tragic, like, with the Tate murders, the Sharon Tate murders, the Manson killings. Abigail Folger was the heir to the Folgers Coffee empire. She was one of the victims that night. She got chased onto a lawn and stabbed 28 times. And her final words were, "Stop it. I'm already dead."
Right.
Meantime, Sharon Tate is in the living room of her home, begging for the life of her baby. And she's telling them, look, take the baby, kill me, but take the baby. And there was no mercy. And as they began to do the deed, she very quietly said, "Mother, mother." And that was the end of it. So, some of them are like that, incredibly touching.
Yeah.
Very, very sad.
I'm just curious, like, how you came to the topic of the book. Do you think a lot about death? What do these stories mean to you when you hear these stories? What is so provocative about them for you?
It reminds me of the old Woody Allen quote. What is it about death? It's that I don't like so much. I think it's the hours. No, I think it's the finality that there's a whole lifetime lived that is then sort of encapsulated in these final moments. Like I say, some of them are incredibly tragic, like we just heard. Some of them, like when Lou Costello died, he was dying in the hospital, and his manager was there, and he said, "You know what I could use? I could use a strawberry ice cream soda. Can you get me one?" And the manager said, "Yeah, sure. What the heck? You're dying. I'm going to help." Goes down, gets it, brings it to the hospital room. He drinks it all up, and he says, "Oh, that was the best soda I ever tasted." And then he fell over dead. So, what an odd final set of words, right before you're gone. But that's the thing. In doing this book, what I found was that the people who did the most prophetic things were the ones who committed suicide, because they would leave their final words in a letter. And so they had the time to actually put these thoughts and feelings down on paper before. And so some of those are incredibly tragic and yet kind of beautiful at the same time, because they've come to grips with their own mortality. It's very interesting.
Bob, actually, I just want to pause for just a second with that. Those were some really great vignettes to kind of describe from the book. I was just sort of taking a minute to kind of see where it all lands with me. And you really told a compelling story today, honestly. I appreciate you being so open to this.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I appreciate you letting me plug the book. And that's the only other thing I'd like to do is let people know where to get it.
Please. Yeah, go ahead.
And that, for those who are interested in the book, it's, again, it's a very easy read, and it's broken down into 75 different stories. So you can pick it up and put it down, and it's a very easy read, summer read. And you can find the book on Amazon. Again, the book is called Last Words of the Famous and Infamous. And it's very inexpensive. It's only selling for $18. And I think it's a fascinating topic that will take you in a lot of different directions, some surprising, some incredibly tragic, but all very interesting.
Absolutely. Bob, just real quick here before we wrap up, I guess, well, first of all, do I have your permission to share this conversation online?
Absolutely.
Great. And
where would I be able to find it if I wanted to share it with other people?
I will, I'll email you, and that's all going to go up, but it'll be on YouTube and Spotify, and there'll be clips going up across social and that kind of thing. Bob, do you have a quick one? I hate this. I'm having a good time talking to you, but I only have a couple of minutes here. But can you leave me with a creature comfort?
Oh boy, the creature comforts are so important, and I think we live in a perpetual state of guilt that is passed on to us from our parents and our grandparents and our co-workers and our classmates. And, there's really something to be said for doing the things that make you happy, whether it's eating a bowl of ice cream at night, or a trip to Disneyland, or seeing the...
Are these yours?
I'm sorry?
Are these yours? Are these your creature comforts? You like a bowl of ice cream at night?
I'm a definite ice cream person, absolutely. And chocolate. Love chocolate. Desperately love chocolate. And I'm diabetic, so I have to be very careful about how I dole these things out. But I'm not going to feel guilty about them. Not anymore. There was a time when I certainly did. Life is too short. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's one of the things I did learn from doing this book is enjoy every minute with friends and family, and be good to yourself.
A big thanks to Bob for his words today. It's never too late to start over. Which one of you needs to hear that? I'm going to say it again for you. It's never too late to start over. It is not age that is holding you back from doing anything. It is that shitty little story that you keep telling yourself. Cut it out. Listen to your inner voice, like Bob and I didn't do when we got married the first time. People talk about this a lot. Listen to your gut. And I've thought about it a lot because I find that many times my gut doesn't seem to have an answer for me. And I look for it. I listen for it. And then I just seem to waver like tirelessly in my head. I can play both sides. But I've decided either I'm not in close enough touch with my gut, very possible, or some problems are not gut worthy. They don't make it to your gut. But sometimes my gut screams at me. It barks. It won't leave me alone. It finds little ways to tell me what's right. Even when I'm asleep, it's telling me what to do. And even if that's not the way I want things to play out, I think that is when you have to listen to your gut, is when it won't leave you alone. And you'll know when. Expectations do not define your path. Action does. So your parents want you to be a factory worker? So what? What do you want to do? You're the only one that gets to be you every day. You're the only one that has to be you every day. So here it comes. Figure out what kind of earth monster you want to be. Get an idea and hang on to it tight like a dog with a bone. Think it, feed it, do it. And remember, we're all monsters. Try to have some empathy. We will be back next week with more epic, everyday stories of success and redemption. You'll see me next time.